The journey of Jacob, a tale of struggle, faith, and destiny. Jacob continued until he came upon a well in Haran. There he met Rachel, Laban's daughter, tending sheep. She was radiant, graceful, and kind. Jacob fell in love with her instantly. He met Laban and offered to work 7 years in exchange for Rachel's hand in marriage. Laban agreed. 7 years passed like days in Jacob's eyes, for his love for Rachel was great. But on the wedding night, under the veil of darkness, Laban deceived Jacob and gave him Leah, the older daughter. In the morning light, Jacob was devastated. "Why have you deceived me?" Laban shrugged. "It is not our custom to marry the younger before the older. Work another 7 years, and you may have Rachel as well." So Jacob labored again. He married Rachel, but tension and rivalry filled the house. Leah, unloved, bore Jacob many sons: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. Rachel remained barren for a time, but later bore Joseph and Benjamin, the sons of Jacob's deepest love. Jacob's household grew, but so did the conflicts. Laban sought to cheat him in wages and herds, changing terms again and again. But Jacob, through clever breeding and God's favor, grew exceedingly wealthy in flocks, servants, and children. For many years, Jacob served Laban faithfully, tending sheep and goats across the fertile pastures of Haran. Yet Laban's heart was not kind. He constantly shifted Jacob's wages, trying to keep as much of the wealth for himself as possible. But the Lord was with Jacob, and his cunning and faithfulness brought him increasing prosperity. Jacob noticed something strange about the flocks. The stronger animals gave birth to weaker offspring, and the weaker animals bore strong young. Curious, he separated the speckled, spotted, and dark-coated animals from the rest. Then, using a clever technique with peeled branches placed before the breeding animals, he influenced their offspring's appearance. Thus, by divine blessing and human craft, Jacob's flocks multiplied while Laban's remained the same. When Laban saw this, he accused Jacob of stealing, but Jacob replied calmly, "You know how I have worked for you. If you take my wages, the speckled and spotted animals shall be my wages." The tension grew. Eventually, God spoke to Laban in a dream, warning him not to harm Jacob. Laban confronted Jacob and they made a pact. "Let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us." They set up a heap of stones, naming it Galeed and Mizpah, a sacred boundary neither would cross with harm. With this agreement, Jacob prepared to return to his homeland. As Jacob set out with his wives, children, and flocks, his heart was heavy with fear. Years had passed since he fled Canaan, but the memory of Esau's angry vow haunted him. He sent messengers ahead with gifts: goats, sheep, camels, and cattle, to soften his brother's heart. The night before meeting Esau, Jacob was alone. He sent his family and possessions across the Jabbok River and remained behind. There, a mysterious figure appeared, a man or perhaps an angel, who wrestled with him until daybreak. Jacob struggled fiercely, refusing to let go. The stranger said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But Jacob would not relent until he received a blessing. Then the stranger touched Jacob's hip, wounding him but not breaking his resolve. Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans, and have overcome. Jacob limped away, changed not only in body but in spirit. At last, Jacob approached Esau's camp. His heart thundered as he arranged his family and flocks in order, hoping to lessen the anger of his brother. Esau saw him from a distance and ran to meet him. But instead of wrath, Esau embraced Jacob with tears and laughter. The brothers wept together, reconciling after years of division. Jacob's gifts were accepted, and the two parted as friends. This moment of peace marked a new chapter, not just for Jacob, but for the future of Israel. Back in Canaan, Jacob built homes, planted crops, and tended to his large family. Yet peace was fragile. One day, his daughter Dinah went out to visit the women of the land and was seen by Shechem, the son of Hamor, a local prince. Shechem desired Dinah and violated her. Though he loved her and asked to marry her, the brothers were enraged by the dishonor. Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, devised a plan. They told Shechem and Hamor that intermarriage would only be possible if all the men of their city were circumcised. Shechem and his people agreed, but on the third day, when the men were still in pain, Simeon and Levi attacked, killing all the males and rescuing Dinah. Jacob was troubled by their violence, fearing retribution from neighboring tribes. Years passed, and Rachel remained barren, her heart heavy with longing. She gave Jacob her maidservant Bilhah, who bore him sons Dan and Naphtali. Leah also bore sons, Issachar, Zebulun, and a daughter, Dinah. Later, Leah's maid Zilpah bore Gad and Asher. Finally, God remembered Rachel. She conceived and bore Joseph, Jacob's beloved son, whose birth brought immense joy. Rachel later bore Benjamin but died giving birth, a sorrow that weighed on Jacob's heart. Jacob loved Joseph more than all his other children, for he was the son of his old age and the child of his beloved Rachel. To show this love, Jacob made Joseph a magnificent robe, rich with many colors and embroidery, a symbol of favor and distinction. This special treatment stirred jealousy and bitterness among Joseph's older brothers. They saw how Jacob's eyes lingered on Joseph and how he was given privileges that none of them received. Their hearts hardened, and envy took root. Joseph, unaware of the storm brewing in his family, had dreams, visions that spoke of his future prominence. One night, he dreamt of sheaves of grain bowing to his sheaf. Another time, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed down to him. When he told his brothers these dreams, their resentment deepened. One day, Joseph was sent by Jacob to check on his brothers who were tending flocks far from home. When the brothers saw Joseph approaching, they whispered among themselves. "Here comes the dreamer," one said bitterly. Reuben, the eldest, begged them not to harm Joseph, but the others, blinded by jealousy, seized him and threw him into an empty pit, intending to leave him to die. Judah proposed they sell Joseph to a caravan of Ishmaelite traders passing by, making sure no blood was shed. The brothers agreed and sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver. They dipped his coat in goat's blood and showed it to Jacob, who mourned deeply, believing his son had been devoured by wild beasts. Joseph was taken to Egypt and sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. Despite the pain of separation, Joseph's character and faith in God shone through. He gained favor in Potiphar's house, becoming overseer of his household. Yet trials followed. Potiphar's wife desired Joseph and tried to seduce him. Joseph refused, loyal to God and his master. Angered, she falsely accused him, and Joseph was thrown into prison. Even in prison, Joseph's integrity and wisdom made him stand out. He interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker, predicting their fates. 2 years later, Pharaoh himself had troubling dreams. 7 fat cows eaten by 7 lean cows, and 7 healthy ears of grain swallowed by 7 thin ears. The cupbearer remembered Joseph's gift and recommended him to Pharaoh. Joseph interpreted the dreams as 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. Impressed, Pharaoh appointed Joseph as second in command over Egypt, in charge of preparing the nation for the coming famine. When the famine struck, it reached Canaan. Jacob sent his sons to Egypt to buy grain. They did not recognize Joseph, now dressed in Egyptian robes and speaking with authority. Joseph tested them, finally revealing his identity. Overwhelmed with emotion, he embraced his brothers and invited his entire family to settle in Egypt. Jacob's family grew and prospered in the land of Goshen, where they would become a great nation. After many years in Egypt, Jacob's thoughts turned to the land of his fathers. Though he had lived in Goshen, surrounded by his children and grandchildren, he longed to rest in the soil where Abraham, Isaac, and his own ancestors had walked. Before he died, Jacob gathered his sons and called them to his bedside. His body was frail, but his spirit was clear and his mind sharp. With deep care, he began to bless each son, speaking of their characters, futures, and destinies. One by one, Jacob spoke prophetic words over his sons, words that would shape the identity of the 12 tribes of Israel. To Reuben, his firstborn, Jacob spoke with sorrow. "You are my firstborn, my might, the first sign of my strength, but unstable as water. You will not excel because you defiled my bed." To Simeon and Levi, he spoke of their fierce anger and violence, warning they would be scattered in Israel. To Judah, he bestowed a royal blessing. "The scepter will not depart from you, nor the ruler's staff from between your feet, until Shiloh comes. The lion's cub shall overcome." To Zebulun, he said he would dwell by the seashore and become a haven for ships. To Issachar, a strong donkey resting between burdens, submitting to forced labor. To Dan, a judge who would provide justice like a serpent. To Gad, a warrior who would be attacked but triumph. To Asher, a producer of rich food and royal delicacies. To Naphtali, a swift deer bringing good news. To Joseph, Jacob gave a long blessing of abundance, fruitfulness, and victory over foes. Finally, to Benjamin, he called him a ravenous wolf who devours prey. Each blessing carried the weight of history and prophecy, setting the stage for Israel's future. With his last breaths, Jacob summoned his sons. I am ready to join my ancestors. Bury me with them in the cave of Machpelah, with Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Leah and Jacob. The sons agreed and swore to carry out his wishes. Jacob died peacefully, and his body was embalmed and prepared for burial. The journey back to Canaan was long and solemn, with Pharaoh himself mourning the loss of the great leader. At Machpelah, Jacob was laid to rest beside his ancestors, closing the chapter of a life full of trials, faith, struggles, and divine encounters. Jacob's life was a tapestry woven with struggle and grace. From his birth gripping Esau's heel, through deception and hardship, divine wrestling and blessing, to the rise of his family in Egypt, Jacob's story is one of transformation. His new name, Israel, meaning he who struggles with God, speaks to the essence of his journey, one of wrestling with doubt, faith, and destiny. Through Jacob's 12 sons, the tribes of Israel were born, shaping the history and identity of a people chosen by God.